Hi, John. How are you?
Good deal. How are you? Nice to formally meet you. We've had chats in LinkedIn, and now it's
Yeah,
cool to be on the show and have us chat. So glad to be
yeah,
here.
we had a lot of chats around that. So yeah, it has been, trying to. So John, the first question that I wanted to ask you was, how did you come up with the name Rainmaker? Because I saw that name and I was like, this is very interesting because of all the agency names that I have read and talked about, this is very, very interesting. Yeah, this is really nice.
So it's a funny story. So like my backstory could take half the call, so I'm going to try to avoid that. So the first agency I started, this is actually where it all started for me. Oddly enough, was it Training Mask, right? Um, and I was his director of marketing for about 7 years before I went off on my own. And we're lifetime best friends. So I have an office in his building, and that's where I'm filming. But when I shortly after that, when I kind of went up, my first agency, and Casey actually made fun of me for it, was Ascendance 360. And the idea was like, oh, ascend and grow. But he's like, that
Yeah,
URL is a mile long and you're going to hate it. Well, he was right. So like when I send emails and stuff like that, like people had to type the whole thing out. Everybody was typing it
yeah,
wrong. Um, and then when I ended up not dissolving my agency, right, to work for an Amazon aggregator called Intrinsic, that focused on health and wellness, and then eventually focused on exclusively in women's health. So I have a lot of foundation there from that experience and my background prior to digital marketing and physical therapy and fitness retail sales and all that stuff. So when I kind of went out on my own this second time, I decided I want something that was shorter, clearly, and I wanted something that meant something, right? Well, unfortunately, rainmaker.com is like thousands
yeah,
of dollars. Right. So I had to find an acronym that I thought if you read it, you could still kind of get the idea of it. And then the idea of rainmaking is essentially what a marketer is supposed to do, right?
yep.
You're supposed to be you're brought in the business to drive sales, however you can muster it, right? And so that was kind of the genesis of it. But so shorter name, and then I think rainmaker is something somebody can remember and get their mind around.
Yeah, because when I read Rainmaker, it's like, somebody who's going to get things done. So yeah, that's very, that actually encourages the clients as well. So, speaking on the topic of, clients and agencies and stuff like that, there has been a lot of, because you have a very great foundation of it. You have worked with a lot of, big players in the market, but there are people who have been just starting out and who, I think there are the mostly Amazon people, the people who are on Amazon business are the first time doers. For example, a person who came into Amazon business and figured it out and made some money and is trying to either start an agency or is trying to uh, grow their brand. So technically they don't have any base foundation of it, so they are very out in the dark about these things. So maybe we can start from that, and yeah, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think I have a couple of things to talk about there. So half of my client roster, right? That's my current client roster. I retained, during while I was at Intrinsic, just a handful of, and that was half of my book of business prior. And I have been with all of those clients since dollar one, right? From
Awesome.
$0. And so um, there's a lot of hard lessons learned when you start from scratch, right? And I think a lot of those lessons you can't replace through, I mean, watching YouTube videos, instructions, all that stuff's part of it. But the lumps you take on your head along the way create the nuances and give you the vision to kind of see outside the box and to, improve tactics and things like that. So um, I would also say that I think I have another topic we're going to discuss in here, but there's a segue where I think a lot of agencies if we're talking about agencies, let's just talk about that for a second. If you're a new freelancer or a new agency owner and you're scanning LinkedIn or social media, it becomes immediately apparent that if you walk down the stairs, you're going to trip over millionaires. Like
Yep.
there's so many. Like if you look at these screenshots, but like that's just
Yeah.
not the reality, right? And so anybody who's been doing this for any amount of time knows that the $1 million a month clients are fractional. Like it's very, very few and far between. And so I think it can be really discouraging for freelancers that are getting started or agency owners are getting started who are probably doing an adequate job or a good job and doing the best they can with what they have to work with. And you look at those, and then you have this perception in your mind that like that's how it's supposed to be, or that's what you have to be. That's what you have to produce to be a successful agency owner. And that's just not the case, right?
Yep.
One thing that I always preach is progress over performance, right? The key to client retention, if I could pick one thing, it's progress over performance, among other things. So those would kind of be the anchors I would recommend new Amazon PPC professionals to kind of tether to.
Yep, that makes sense. And also in the specifically Amazon business, the first half of the year and second half of the year, it's totally opposite. So I think even you can't even
Mm,
measure it for the, first year client, or, the first dollar client. Yeah, everything changes so suddenly. And he's like, when we started this, if somebody starts a business in on January 1st, by the year end, the book on December 20th or 21st is going to be very different. And yeah, the progress over, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. Progress over performance, because Amazon fluctuates a lot, and there are fees and stuff, and everything else that comes in between. And also when you come from a client perspective, for example, when you start an agency and you are hunting for Amazon sellers, that's
mhm,
another, another I think it's the most difficult job out there, because if you are looking for hospital owners, or if you are looking for director of certain medication, you
mhm,
can find him on LinkedIn. It's very easy.
mhm,
But you try to go online and try to find Amazon seller, they mostly call themselves entrepreneur, or they just, even if their brand is big enough, they have forgot to update on LinkedIn. So that's a
mhm.
whole issue where you cannot find them. So switching gears into another thing, that the thing that we were talking about earlier, brand's identity, the thing that
Yeah,
for example, you created the Rainmaker, and you have been, it's a really something that actually a person can understand. And if somebody types it an email or sees an email from Rainmaker, he understands that this person is going to help me and work for me, and this is the brand identity is strong enough. So can we talk a little bit about, when we are starting a brand, or when we are starting an agency, how important it is to, sustain or make our own brand identity powerful?
that's such a great question, Adele. Um, it's I wouldn't say it's laughable, but I would say, and I fell into this bucket too, right? So I've learned these lessons, and over the years of struggles and hardships and just the hard road, every lesson learned gives you perspective, right? And I think as a marketer, as an Amazon marketer, or just an ecom digital marketer in general, we spend a lot of time thinking about and recommending, you know, how important brand is to our clients in terms of their
Yep.
product, right? So how they need to get a, brand guide and all this stuff. Yet, if you look at 95% or more,
Yeah.
right? That's not an exaggeration of agencies. It, there's no identity there, right? There's no branding,
Yep.
and branding isn't just a logo, right? And so there's a few examples that stand out to me. I think a lot of people that follow the space will be able to identify with and go, oh, that's what he means. That's what he's talking about. So I'm sure everybody's heard of Destiny. I remember Destiny from very, very early years when her and Mina were in. There was this Facebook group called the Brax Amazon group. Sammer Brax, a lot of people might know him. Um, and they just started making posting content. This is, I don't know how many years ago it was, but that's kind of where they got their start. I've watched them grow to this day. But if you really look at Destiny and you look past the tactics and the bid ops and DSP and all the stuff she talks about, and you look at what the bedrock of her success, I would say it's about two things with her. And so you want to get in the mode of when you're looking at the competitive landscape for yourself is identifying these things about peers, right? So I would say she's about prestige and pedigree, right? And that shows in her content, that shows in how she conducts herself. And because she's built, that's part of who she is. She's built from that foundation. Now she's on Amazon Accelerate. She's one of the top, one of the top speakers and top, you know, experts in the space, right? If we look
Yep.
at, let's say Mina's another great example. Mina to me is the pure entrepreneur hustler, right?
Yep.
Like I know Mina well. He is a gritty, hard work guy. That's the feel you get from him, right? And I
Yep.
think my Amazon guy is another great example. Look past the content. My Amazon guy has probably made, if he hasn't made 10,000 videos by now, it's got to be close, right?
Yeah, yeah.
From every topic you can imagine. And so he's all about value, right?
Yep.
And so when you're looking across at these different, that's their brand. It's not their logo, right? And so if you want to stand out in the space, right, you need to be able to identify those things in others, but you can't copy it because that's their secret sauce, right? And
Yeah.
so it's about, and everybody has a layer of authenticity, right, that you need to tap into and speak from your own experience. And if you, as you do that for long enough, these things will start to surface and you can find anchors. Because at the end of the day, you know, if authenticity is pillar one, right?
Yep.
If somebody has to trust you, or at least there needs to be some semblance of surface level trust before they're willing to engage in a conversation with you, right? And if they can't figure out who you are, which is like before branding, like just the very basic foundations of it, the odds that they're going to entertain your DM or message you back are very, very low. And I think AI has kind of accelerated that inauthenticity, right? Everybody thinks it's a fast forward button. And I think as a just a brief segue that will be worthwhile to a lot of, I see a lot of freelancers falling into this trap. The road to success is long and it doesn't
Yep.
get shorter because you find shortcuts. As a matter of
Yep.
fact, every time you deviate, it gets longer, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
I think we lean into this AI thing. If you look through LinkedIn right now, I would say people use it as like, I need to post as much content as possible. They ask it a simple question. I'd be shocked if it was more complex than this. Create a LinkedIn post about Amazon PPC and cut and paste.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
as everybody's scanning the content, yours looks like just like everybody else's. And there's this
Yep.
illusion because some of the thought leaders do this too. You think, well, that's what they're doing, but they already have an identity.
Yeah.
People aren't reading their post because of what's in it at this point. They're reading their post
Yep.
because of who they are. So I think that is kind of like the bones and the roots and foundations. If agencies, you need to look at yourself through the same branding lens that you look at your clients with.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense that when you have built authenticity, you then even if you do a little bit of AI posting, that's justified. But when you are building your own agency or content, you need your content to stand out, and it needs to be very unique, that people actually see the value in it, or actually see that, okay, this actually this is somebody who knows what he's talking about. That's also I've been. And also, it's very funny that another thing that I've noticed, and that is, most course sellers, people who sell courses, don't talk
Mhm,
much about branding, or don't emphasize more on branding. They are even in 2021 or in 2020s, the golden age of Amazon. They used to
mhm,
say, okay, find something on Alibaba, or find something X and Y, and then
mhm,
just pack it, and just send it to
mhm,
Amazon FBA, and then it will be done, and it will start selling. But now I
mhm,
think, as the fees have grown up, and as you have seen, the market has shrunk to a lot, and now
mhm,
there is a lot of Chinese players as well as other players in the market as well. So you need to work
mhm,
very hard on your branding, even if you are Amazon seller, or even if you are agency owner, because agency owners, there are a lot of agencies now as well. Before, in good
mhm.
old times, there were 5 or 10 agencies that you could,
Right.
even if one client goes from one to
Mhm,
another, you could actually tell, okay, he's now working with that guy, and
mhm.
it is going to be like 3 months before he come back, or stuff. So yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. uh, but for example, you talked about Mac, that they have built it from value. You talked about Mina, who has who hustles a lot, and he just works on stuff, and figures out the best possible way to get things done. How many you think there are things that people can actually go into or grow into to make their agency noticeable? I think I'm being very vague here, but yeah.
No,
uh,
I follow. I follow. The thing about it is, the deal is everybody knows what to do, but how you approach the what to do is everything, right? So, the number one way to create visibility in a perfect world is an Amex that we never have to pay, that we can just run advertising, right? And Bradley has a saying, it's better known beats best every day of the week, right? And so that's the
yeah.
easy path. Well, A lot of us don't have that option or very limited resources in that regard. So we know that commenting on posts, for example, is that's actually ironically enough how I built my business to begin with. So I got all my clients, right? I made thoughtful comments from their
Yeah.
questions that I reflected and I filtered through my experience and things like that. And so I would say, AI again is kind of taken over in that regard. I would say not taking shortcuts there. And the other thing, there's another, clearly we both follow a lot of entrepreneurs outside the space. And I would strongly recommend anybody who owns a business, is a small business owner. I don't know his name off the top of my head, but he's one of the co-founders of Airbnb. And one of the things that he said in one of his talks will stick with me till my dying days. And he said, do things that don't scale, which is really counterintuitive because everything we hear is about scaling. I
Yeah.
need to scale this. I need to scale that. I need to grow it. And then he says it resets. And so he goes on and explain it. And so what I mean by that is this: instead of having 500 people or 1,000 people or sending out 10,000 DMs a day or whatever it might
Yeah.
be, identify 50 or 60 prospects on a list and stick with them, right? And by stick with them, I mean be thoughtful about the content and just be supportive of their brand, even if they don't go with you today, and do that over time and then eventually DM them, right? I think we get impatient in reach outs, right? So I think that would be one way that people get to know you, right? Because that's the genesis of a brand, right? Before we even talk about when somebody knows
Yep.
you, they know who they are instantly by looking at your logo. We look at Coke, we know what it is, but there's how many 100 years of, so it starts there, right? And I would say the other thing that's really, really important is find your voice, right? And so tip of the hat to you, Adil, right? So, I get, reach outs periodically from people that do shows or want to do whatever stuff like that. I always end up going to look at their content. And when I looked at your YouTube channel and watched a few of the videos, I got a very clear idea of what you're about. And to me, you stood out in that regard in terms of the quality of your thumbnails. Like there's just you take a lot of care in how you curate the content. And so then I was excited to be on the show with you, right? And so I think being careful and thoughtful, not only about the content we create, but our posts and our visuals and anything we're using to communicate and tell stories about us as an agency, care and curation, like that is an irreplaceable resource. And I think a lot of people shortcut that because it's a
Yep.
lot of work, right?
Yep.
So that would be my few recommendations.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense as well. Uh, Things that don't scale, that actually makes a lot of sense,
Mhm.
because the more because I do have a thing on that as well. Most of the clients that I have, I do a meeting with them, and then some of them go out and do my go through my podcast, and they come back to me and
Mhm.
they're like, okay, we think you are a good fit. People who don't know me do that, and some people who have already seen my content, or they have done that, they are immediately like, okay, we know that you are good, so let's just talk about
Mhm.
the other things, or let's just talk about problems. So because it actually is a hard road. And you are also right about the shortcuts as well, because shortcut is the longest road in the end, because you figure out that, okay, this doesn't work, or if you try to leave anything on the table, that actually builds up as a discouragement for your clients in the end. So yeah, I
Mhm.
think that needs to be taken care of first. But obviously, the thing that building a brand is, I think, the hardest thing in the world, because
Mm.
you need,
Mhm.
yeah, because people say that because this is the like, even from the day one, my point is, like, if you want to do a shortcut, just do a job, because it's easier, at the end of the month, this is the amount of money that you're gonna get,
Mhm.
and it's easy. But if you're building a brand and you need to figure out everything, and you need to stay on top of everything, for example, if you have a let's just say, if you have a toys, if you sell toys, or let me just give you a very old example
Mhm.
of one of the first few clients that I got. They went into the business, Amazon business, and they found a very cheap supply sourcer, and they wanted to start in Germany market. They actually it was basically, you have seen those LED lights that change colors and stuff like that. They are mostly in
Yes.
rooms and stuff.
Mhm.
So it was the one that is controlled by a small remote. So while they were ordering it, their there's the supply chain manager told them that there is a new one that's like 50 cent expensive per
Mm,
unit, but it allows you to connect it to Android. And they were like, no, we are going to go with
mm,
the simple one.
mm,
And by the time it reached Germany, because there is a lot of paperwork in Germany and stuff, the
mm.
Android one was already there, and that's how they lost their business. So, and that was their first launch. Yeah. So 50 cents on a dollar, 50. Yeah.
I'm gonna riff on that. Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
I'm gonna bounce off that a little bit. So, oh, those are the stories, right? Those are my favorite stories. Like, yes, I talked about this a little bit earlier. We learn a lot from our successes, but we learn far more from the struggles. And
Yep.
so, my take home from that is this is something I've actually been thinking a lot about lately, and it's a classic example of how the thought about how we think about launching products and owning a private label business on Amazon is changing, right? So
Yep.
AI is a great example of that. So for a long time, Amazon, it was such a the listings were awful. They were poorly SEO'd. The graphics are terrible. Like you could come in with just barely an effort
Yeah.
in the early days, 2018, 2019, and increase the sales, right? Like optimize your list, like all that stuff. But the bar has definitely improved to a
Yep.
significant degree. Now, could it get better? Yes, but the leverage there has gone down considerably, and how much leverage you can create by pulling that lever, right? And so the typical Amazon playbook up until still is how much more can I improve my main image?
Yep.
I mean, how much more can I do? Like, there's only so much you can do, and it's not going to create. It's incremental at best, right? So, and then on the back of that, we have AI that gives us all of these great insights on niche dynamics and customer sentiment, all of these things, right? And so we can create copy in our listings and graphics that speak to those pain points. And then they get the product home and it doesn't deliver, and you get
Yeah.
7 or 8 3-star reviews, 2-star review, and a 1-star review, and you're out of business in 4 months, right?
Yep.
And then go back a little bit further, and you'll see where I'm coming back to this is that I have a similar story. One of the brands that we'd worked with was a dental brand, and um, one of the managers, because this was they own like a number of brands, right? And so the owner, one of the guys on their marketer, the head of marketing said he came up with this. He had TMJ problems, right? And so he looked on it. Naturally, anybody that deals with Amazon, I promise you, we're all searching for Amazon things like, oh, I wonder if that's on Amazon. We do it all the time. Well, he did that.
Yeah.
Well, come to find out, there were lots of people searching for TMJ pain relief and all that stuff. No products existed, right? So lots of white space and very specific search interest. That is a golden opportunity,
Yep.
right? So he had a massager in another category, right? And so to get to market fast, I think in hindsight being 2020, we didn't have to be as fast, but we didn't know that then. We just put that massager in a different box for a different use case, and it went ballistic, right? It went absolutely ballistic because there was nobody there. I'm talking within 3 weeks, 6K days. It was
Oh.
incredible and exciting, and yay, and like
Yeah.
at the casino, like ding, 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 ding,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
everybody's excited. Within a short period of time, the reviews started to roll in, and we ended up figuring out that it was jackhammering people's faces. It was stiff, it was hurting, so we were getting bad reviews. Well, now you can't undo it. And
Yep.
then on the back of that, your competitors, Chinese direct manufacturers, see these problems, and then they come up with a softer durometer, a softer rubber, and they one up you, and then you're
Yep.
spent, right? So taking the time, like what you said, the 50 cents, right? Taking the time to really make tangible, hard product improvements based on what the market is telling you instead of just dropping in another one. I'm telling you, if you don't do that moving forward, you're going to have a very hard time winning, right?
Yep.
Because you can still find these arbitrage opportunities with something I call shadow demand, but those aren't clear to the tools, right? And so that was such a great point of deal. I think that was one of the topics I actually wanted to discuss today was that very thing.
Yep.
So
Yeah, because the more I work with clients, because usually what happens is, whenever you onboard a client, they are very, reluctant, and they are just sharing with you what you need to know and stuff like that. But once they open up, you start to notice what's going around and stuff like that. And I've started noticing wherever they have tried to cut corners, they have always been they have always been hammered there, and it has been a real pain point. Even for like 15 minutes ago, I was trying to just fix a problem that they created, obviously because they just didn't want to just go through a new batch, so they sent in an old batch. So yeah, and yeah, just a lot of mess, and it's a very complicated, like, Amazon is a very lucrative business, and you do see
Mhm.
a lot of numbers, like you can see a
Mhm.
100K sales days. But obviously, the if you start getting bad reviews, or if you start doing shady stuff, they can go out, and then you can be on the road like that. I have seen it happen, like it just happens overnight, and then you are like, okay, where is my business gone? Like, I had such a good thing going on. So it's very important to do the hard thing first. And yeah.
Mhm. One more thing there is, as I was saying, the only thing more tragic than launching an Amazon business and failing is launching a successful Amazon business and then failing. Far
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
worse.
yeah.
Far worse. That's so, yeah, that's what kind of popped into my head as you were telling your story.
Yep. So also there is another question that I wanted to ask about, is the well-beaten path that you were talking about. You have talked about
Mm.
it. So yeah, I just wanted to ask about, like, how do you see it, and how do new people see it? Because it's very hard, because there is very less documentation available. Of course, there are a lot of courses available, but good hard
Mhm.
documentation on Amazon, it's very rare. And especially in both cases, in the agency space, it's near to nothing, and in the brand business, it's still very, very rare. Yeah.
Such a great question. So I would say there's a reason that, so when I talk about the well-beaten path, is that it's very clear that if you go this way, you can make money and be successful, right? Very clear. There's lots of thought leaders in our space that have built very successful and thriving agencies. There's a lot of what I would say medium tier players that have also created lucrative lifestyles for themselves, and a lot of people along the way. But the wider the path gets, the more crowded it gets, if that makes
Yep.
sense. And we're at such a juncture now, as you talked about earlier, is that as we look down the road, it looks like there's more space in between these successful people. Like, you can get there, but the truth is to the left and the right of you, right? You're stuck in obscurity. It's very hard to get out of there, right? And so the sad fact of the matter is that because it's so hard, a lot of people are probably going to fade, right? And that's just the nature of life. So I would say if there are people out there that are discouraged, that are maybe 6 or 8 or 9 or 10 months into this, there's probably a lot of people in this boat,
Yep.
and they're like, man, I just cannot break through here, right? And so, and they're probably discouraged for a number of reasons. A, because you see all the success out there, and B, it to me, Amazon advertising, if you take that chunk of Amazon out, there's more information on Amazon advertising than probably anything else, right?
Yeah.
There's so much information, courses, videos, people do keynote speeches, like talks, like tactics, bit like you can everybody has access to that. And keep in mind that if the more defined and clear, like what you need to do to get to from point A to point B, if it's clear for you and easy for you, it's easy for everybody else too, right? And so, but my recommendation would be, and this is more of like a learned skill, and it's tough for me to really like quantify how to do it, but I'll do my best to do it justice. So you need to find white space. Okay. Just like we try to find white space on Amazon and niches, right? For example, let me give an example of white space that comes off the top of my head. I'm just going to make something up. Yoga mats. Okay. All of a sudden, hot yoga becomes a thing.
Yep.
People are sweating and soaking their mat. People are searching for hot yoga mat. There's nothing there. Make a mat for hot yoga. That's white space, right? There's a
Yeah,
pain
yeah.
point, a defined pain point that doesn't have a solution. Okay, we do that with products, but we don't do that in terms of like digital marketing. And so, there's a lot, there's a lot, I think TikTok shops is a trend. Like, you don't necessarily want to be a trend hopper either, right?
Yep.
Because you'll just end up, you never do something long enough to be like a true expert, in your field. And I'm not poo-pooing that by any means. Like if people want to stay the TikTok shops for the long haul, you will make money, but it gets easier to chase the next shiny thing. So that's not what I'm advocating. I think AI creates a lot of unique opportunities. Let me give you an example. So if you look at like trying to find sellers is tough, like you said, but I can find agencies on LinkedIn all day long. It's pretty
Yeah.
easy because everybody's loud. Everybody's trying to find clients like it's all day long. So potentially look at ways that you can help serve agencies.
Yep.
One thing that jumps out to me is custom dashboard. Custom dashboards is a significant like pain point that I think a lot of small and smaller medium sized agencies aren't aware of, right? Because that would be a good definition of branding. For example, I'm working on one right now, and there's a lot of KPIs and things that I look at to benchmark businesses that none of the other dashboards offer me. And I have to do all that manually, right? And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
that would be like a good opportunity. One that's kind of already happened, right? So you can't just do these things specifically. I'm trying to get people into like
Yeah.
looking.
Yeah,
It's
I
not so much,
understand.
oh, I can do that. It's like get in the be able to look at the landscape and find opportunities. Flat files are like the arch nemesis of so many sellers. Like
Yeah.
it's not super hard to figure out, but like they're
Yep.
terrified of the concept of a flat file. If they can't input it in the Amazon fields, they freak out.
Yep.
Well, I mean, even some agencies this way, right? So
Yeah.
there's tools like Flat File Pro that like just exclusively serve that thing. And it's so painful for so many people. I mean, you do 1,000 reach outs in agencies and you're going to have strong interest,
Yep.
right? Compliance, like there's lots and lots of things. So sometimes when you're walking a path like Amazon advertising and and it's tough and you just can't get anything going, you've been exposed to lots of pain points in the industry. And sometimes if you can identify those things and just pivot, you can be immensely successful,
Yep.
right? So I guess my point is like use that same, this is a really great way to explain it. Use the same method or the same thought process that you do when you're trying to find products for your clients to identify market opportunities in the agency space to help service providers, right? So that was kind of like, and now there's a hard part of this caveat, right? It's not a well-beaten path.
Yeah.
You're not going to find YouTube videos on how to use an AI dashboard and find to like they're not going to be able to find these things. You're going to have to figure that stuff out on your own, and
Yep.
that sucks, and it's hard, and that can be discouraging in itself. But that road is much shorter, and if you're willing to put in the work to figure those things out and build a system around it, the rest kind of takes care of itself. But I think that's where a lot of people fail too, because they want to put the cart before they put the horse. Like, I can make money a lot faster now as advertising.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't have to figure stuff out. No, the figuring the stuff out is where the gold is. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That actually makes a lot of sense as well. And what I have started to notice is that, you actually a lot of people who got success were the ones who came into early adopters. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say.
Mhm.
And the good thing is you can be an early adopter in a lot of spaces. Like you said, compliance is an issue that even still today I see that people get into unique problems, and then you have to find a unique solution for that unique problem every time it occurs. So that's
Mhm.
a very thing that you have to go through and you have to figure out. And also this finding sellers and other stuff. Yeah, that actually is because the saying is that when there's a gold rush, sell shovels instead of looking for the gold.
You nailed it, a deal. Exactly. That's precisely my point. Yep.
So yeah, that was the thing. But let's just talk about sellers specifically for a second. I just wanted to,
Sure.
because yeah, because you have a lot of experience with sellers. So yeah, why did you
Mhm.
like why did you find health and wellness is so
Mm,
lucrative that you went into that direction? Because again, compliance,
mm.
health and wellness is a nightmare for the compliance. For me, for a person who does a very generic
For everybody.
Amazon. Yeah. So yeah, so how do you
Oh, that's
tackle
such a
that
good
on day to
question.
day basis, because you do it daily? Yeah.
Such a great question. So the first caveat is that I didn't just arbitrarily pick this, like because this goes back to the branding issue, right? So typically, like there's certain things, foundations that you need to think about when you're looking at branding, right? And positioning is job number one, if not two, right? And so um, health and wellness is a huge sector. And I didn't even have my I didn't even look at it this way until I was at Intrinsic, right? Because what we had is we had a lot of aggregators at that time, right? And nobody was really niching out, right? And so
Yeah,
that
yeah,
gave us advantage when reaching out to brands. And so when I left, I was talking with Chris and some other people that were, you know, were kind of displaced, and he talked about, well, it seems like it'd be a great idea for agencies to maybe think about health and wellness. And I thought about it deeper, and I went, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But it made a lot of sense from the positioning standpoint, but it also made a lot of sense for my overall background, right?
yeah, yeah.
Which has always, if I'm completely honest, been a point of insecurity for me in a way, right? Now, I've been a digital marketer for about 15 years, right? But some of these guys like Mina were engineers, right? Data scientists before they came in. And I felt like inadequate in a way, like, wow, these guys are like this. And what if people aren't going to think that I know my stuff? And that was purely in my head, right? But it was a point of insecurity. But this really got to tie my whole story together. I mean, my first job out of high school when I was in college is I was a manager at GNC, right?
Nice.
Um, I from my next job after that is I sold high end fitness equipment as I was finishing up college, and sports and coaching. I'm a coach, right? Like it's a big part of
Yeah,
my life. It's been a part of my life my entire life practically. Um, and I went to college for physical therapy and health services administration before I ended up doing like technical writing and ending up at training master and ending up down this road. And it really tied everything together for me, right? And so I have just a lot of general knowledge there, right? And,
yeah,
and he
yeah,
talked about the compliance piece. And my brand manager who came with me from Intrinsic, Eric, is a first of all, at Intrinsic. If people think aggregation is doing this as a brief aside, they're hopelessly wrong, because I was in the room with those people when we would have on sites, and they're some of the most intelligent, most brilliant people I've ever been around, right? So that machine's still going to go. But Eric was one of the people. He's one of the brand managers there, and he worked at Procter and Gamble for a number of years, Nestle, and had worked on. He's a biologist, right? And so He really understands compliance and product development, and just like if we're talking about like product research development 101 prior to Amazon.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, it takes P&G how many years to launch up the pods? Like
yeah,
there's
yeah,
a whole cycle of things. He's very, very deep there. And so he is very, very well versed in thinking that way. Right. And so that gives us a unique advantage on the compliance side and the product development side, because finding opportunities in one thing, but seeing if they're really going to pay off is another. And so when you
yep,
understand supplements and biology and formulations, and changing, there's form innovations. Like I'm not going to go too far off the beaten path, but like, uh, for example, let's look at creatine gummies, right?
yeah,
That's a form innovation, right? So typical creatine with scoop put in a drink. Well, it's great and it tastes like crap. Well, if somebody came out, well, why not put them in a gummy? Well, gummies taste good. There's a dopamine hit when you eat a gummy, right? And
yep,
so, of course, people rather take gummies like that. That's kind of transitioned everywhere if you look at it that way.
yep,
But that's a form innovation, right? And so we're able to look at things from that kind of that subtlety and that nuance point. Where if like I did something in like I'm terrible, like I'm not somebody who builds decks and houses. Like that's not who I am. So like if I went into like selling like power tools or like something along those lines, like that
yeah,
niche.
yeah,
Like
yeah. I
I would
understand. Yeah,
I'm picking it just because it's a niche, but like I don't have the deep foundation and understanding of those types of things. And I think the other thing there too is an agent, you might be a freelancer, go, well, I don't really have any really deep, I don't have, 10 or 12 years of experience like you, John, in health and wellness and fitness before that. So what do I do? Follow your interests, right?
yeah,
So it might be electronics, it might be audio. I mean, you can find
yep,
all of these things. And what will inevitably end up happening when you look at the business is you look at it more, it's more than just KPIs and CTRs and CPCs and CDRs, right? When I look at it through that lens, and I also look at it through the lens of what the supplement does, why the people are taking it,
yeah,
all of those things. And when you approach it from like a niche standpoint, you become a far better marketer, right?
yep.
So does that kind of answer it?
Yeah, yeah, that actually answers it. And I was thinking about, three or four people were actually very like, who became from rags to riches, Amazon sellers who I work with, and they were the guys who actually, saw a problem or were facing a problem, and they created a product for that, and then they started selling it. So, they solved a problem, and that's why, and they solved it passionately. That's the most important part, that they solve
Well
it
said.
passionately. So they feel it like, okay, this is the next problem that we are gonna have, or stuff something like that. So yeah, that makes sense as well. So we are actually approaching the end of the podcast.
Mhm.
So uh, I'm gonna, I just wanna know your thoughts on, since it's 2025, it's actually quarter 3, quarter 4 of the 2025.
Mhm.
How does a new person who is just starting out, or how does a new, business seller start out in this climate when, we are approaching the, 90-day deadline on, tariffs and stuff like that?
Oh, I think we've actually touched on a lot of
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
these points that I'll rehash throughout the talk. But I would say, and it's not necessarily the answer people want to hear, and I'm not saying this to be fluffy. I'm saying this has been the truth of me succeeding, right? And there's clearly a lot more that I want to accomplish. Your success, there's clearly a lot more you want to accomplish, right? But if you want to get
yep,
to a point where like you can finally look behind you and something's happened behind you, right? You get to a spot where you start to understand some things. So I talked about authenticity. I talked about, you know, avoiding shortcuts. And I think
yep,
another thing, another common fault, and this is a lot of, I think a lot of young male entrepreneurs tend to fall into this trap, is that it's very easy to, like, because there's so much out there about, you start to chase the awesome cars, and like you want that lifestyle, and who doesn't want a great life, right? But and so you approach it with that hunger. That hunger creates a desperation. That desperation can be sniffed out by clients. And inevitably, what they end up sussing out intuitively is that you want something from them, right? That is a very, very poor way to build the business. But you need to redirect that, right? And so what kind of how I look at it is this way. It's like, your clients are not a vehicle for you to go on tropical vacations.
yeah, yeah,
You are the vehicle to get them to go on tropical vacations. And I've done, like, I'll get choked up about this because like my hair is standing up. There's been a lot of hard stuff along the way, and it's incredibly rewarding to see the fruits of your labor, to see them go enjoy something spectacular. That's when you
yeah,
know you've done your job. And I promise you, if you do that for enough people, you will find yourself on the beach,
yeah, yeah,
right? And so you have to reframe it from that point of view. It's not, I can't keep clients. It's, how can I provide enough value that my clients don't want to leave, right? It sounds
yep,
like it's like semantics, but it's not. If you become an indispensable part of their business, they're not going to get rid of you even when it's hard. Like, that's really
yeah,
the secret to my success. If you talk to any one of my clients, I guarantee this. If they have a problem in their mind, John is the first thing they think of,
yep,
right? I've done a lot of free stuff over the years, a lot of work, a lot of extra hours. And I'm not saying give everything away for free, right? But you build relationships that way. And you
yep,
start with your 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 clients, right? And if you work from that foundation, you're going to be just fine.
yep. Yeah, yeah, that's very true. And because that hunger thing, it reminded me of something that happened, a few days ago. We were talking about it, and we were talking about a person who, wants to be in with the, rich people. And I was just telling the other guy that, you don't want, because if you know somebody, or a client who has money, or he knows that you want something from him, he's going to avoid you like a plague, because he has
Mhm.
been rich for quite a time, so he has seen those people who just want something from him. So anyone who has money wants to avoid that relationship where there is a give and take. But you can be a friend, you can be help to them, or you can be a problem solver for them. When you approach it from that standpoint, you start making actually friends, or you start making actually people or connections that last you a long lifetime, instead of you just trying to get in with the crowd or something like that, because that actually leaves you desperate and actually leaves you alone as well in the long run.
Well said.
Yep. So yeah, that was the end of the podcast. But yeah, I do want to know, like, for you, John, personally for you, what do you
Mhm.
like plan to do in 5 years? In 5 years' time, yeah.
Oh, I would say the first thing, good Lord willing, I'm still around, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
So that's the first thing. Um, but I'm spending a lot of time I don't have, what side time I can invest into. I feel bad even saying it because it's almost toxic to me because I dislike hype with like a passion. So even
yeah,
saying AI makes my tongue burn. But I'm doing a lot of thinking about creating my own SaaS tools that I can incorporate, as part of my agency that handle problem. I almost have a review tool because reviews, white space, huge problem for everybody,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But compliance is also a problem, right? And so, using the power of AI to create these tools to solve these problems in a unique way that only my agency can solve, right? And
yeah,
so,
yeah,
built on that foundation, I'm not really interested in having the biggest agency on the face of the planet. I don't care, right?
yeah, yeah,
And I'm not interested in having 200 clients. In a perfect world, I have 25 or 30, right? Now I have a number of clients there from right now, but like if there's two or three, I promise you a deal if you think about it. There's two or three or four clients in your head that if every one of them were like that, you would thoroughly enjoy your life.
yeah,
And so I want that, like I want
yeah,
like a medium-sized agency that's white glove high touch service where we're true partners for their businesses. And I don't say that as a cliche. I say that with 100% conviction. So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
kind of my plan. What's your plan?
My plan, to be very honest, I'm looking into, a different businesses in different continents that are niche to that continent. So the reason, like, you might have heard that, I moved to Europe a few months ago,
Mhm.
and now looking into, trying to start something here, and that's my 5 year 10 year plans are, headed towards. So, and it's very enjoyable as well, because when we were,
Mhm.
young, or young, dumb and stupid, everything, every problem was, unsolvable for us, because, we didn't have the resources. But now we have a little bit of resources, and we understand the world a little bit better. So whenever we see a new problem, we approach it from a very different angle. Like, okay, this is a problem that's happening in this space. So maybe if I approach it from that standpoint, that is going to solve it. Or maybe if I, and you like, it's, even if you have some problems, for example, if you had a problem 10 years ago and you approach it again, like now, you will smile at how easy it was to fix it. And yeah, that kind of a thing. Yeah, I actually enjoy, solving problems. And yeah, so that's why I ask you, like,
Yeah, that's the best part of what we do. I know we got to jump off, but um, I look at how I look at the world now versus how I looked at the world even 10 years ago.
yeah,
And you look at it through, if I look at it there, I look through ambitious eyes and fearful eyes,
yeah,
right? And now I look at it as like, wow, that's an opportunity, that's an opportunity, that's an opportunity. And you realize that even if you don't necessarily, it's about being resourceful, not having resources, right?
yeah,
So you're just able to, and that's why it's about the journey, not to be corny about it, right? Like sometimes, a lot of people out there might not be able to distill a 5 year plan. If you just keep walking the path, the opportunities will present themselves in front of you. And
yeah,
so sometimes that can be a plan in itself. A lot of times people don't want to hear one foot in front of the other, but I promise you, if you do that long enough,
yeah,
things are going to work out. So,
yeah. Yeah, that's my plan. Like, I thoroughly enjoy solving problems. So
mhm,
yeah, this new thing that I have, it's very different from, even from Amazon. It's very outside Amazon. It's in the physical space. But yeah, I was looking at it, like, even if somebody approached me 10 years ago and they talked about it, I wouldn't understand it, or I wouldn't be able to do anything about it. But now, due to the Amazon journey, and due to, facing all
mhm.
these things and this whole journey, I'm able to, figure it out, and provide something. And it's very interesting. And also, whenever you are able to learn something new from an experience, I think that's a blessing on its own. Even if you don't make as much money, like, even if you are not driving a shiny Lamborghini, but the fulfillment
Mhm.
that you get from following, from solving a problem is really good
The bigger the
so
lump,
far.
the harder the head.
Yeah.
Yep, the bigger the lump, the harder the head, right? And hard heads are what get Lamborghinis, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, and who doesn't want nice cars, right? So I'm not
Yeah.
saying guys don't be you just have to you have to mute the ambition.
Yeah.
It needs to be like a dull like underneath, and you need to get it's just I hate cliches, but you just have to put people in front of yourself, and when you figure that out, um,
Yeah.
things will get a lot easier for you. Easier said than done. Probably a lot harder to do that than to learn bid strategy, right? So,
Yeah.
right. So,
Yeah.
got it. Yep.
Yeah. So John, I think it has hit the 50-minute mark. So, I'm just
Great.
gonna
It
break
was a
it
great
there. But
chat.
we haven't talked about Amazon advertising at all. I wanted to, but this has been a really great discussion. I really hope we can do this again sometime so that we can,
Sure.
address other topics as well. But yeah, this was great. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got great stuff on ads too, out of the box stuff that I think a lot of people find useful. Um,
Awesome. Awesome.
quick aside there, I know we got to jump. This would be my one recommendation. If you follow the herd, you get trampled, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
counterculture is the way to go, right? So if everybody's doing exact match, start testing broad match, right? So there's things along in that vein that I think a lot of people could find some value. And if we ever have when we have another chat, which would be fantastic.
Sure, sure. So we will need to do a very detailed chat on it, because it's
Okay.
very interesting to follow that topic as well, and it gets very technical as well. But this conversation on its own is a very gold
Mhm.
mine. I really enjoyed it. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I
My
really
pleasure.
learned a lot from you as well.
It was fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you.